I've always wanted to play a true survival game. A game where you have to use limited resources cleverly to keep yourself warm, fed, and safe. A game where you're not battling enemies, but nature herself. While The Forest doesn't quite get there, it's the closest thing I've seen so far. The Forest begins with a cinematic plane crash. You awake in the smoldering wreckage of a plane as a terrifying cannibal looms over you. You watch helplessly as he takes your son and leaves you to your own devices. As setups go, this one is certainly pretty strong. After the opening scene, the Sandbox survival truly starts. You come back to in the wreckage of the plane, hurt, hungry, and carrying nothing. Luckily, there are lots of resources available to get you started. Inside the plane, you can scarf down a few airline meals, steal some soda, meds, and booze, and get your first tool of the game, a fire axe that was left deeply embedded in an unfortunate flight attendant. Outside the plane, the resource gathering continues. You can pick through suitcases and some of the wreckage to find additional items, many of which come in very handy. Once that's done, all that's left to do is to plunge into the titular forest. Interestingly, the plane crash site is randomized, so there's no telling where you'll be starting the game. The map is fairly diverse, with beaches, fields, hills, cliffs, and dense forest. What I like here is that there's a lot of variety, but it still feels like a very real place. They don't sacrifice realism to include additional bios that wouldn't make much sense, which is really nice. The realism is a big draw to the forest. The graphics are stunning, especially compared to other games in the sandbox genre, where cubes tend to dominate the overall design. By contrast, the forest is gorgeous and just begs to be explored. Of course, the whole time you're wandering around the idyllic wilderness of the forest, you're going to have a constant nagging feeling that you're being watched. It doesn't help that you'll occasionally wander across grisly effigies made from the remains of your fellow passengers. Eventually, you'll run across some of the game's enemies, a group of savage cannibals. And yes, they're the same group that kidnapped your son at the beginning of the game. If, or should I say when you're killed, you wake up in the cannibal's cave, which is pretty terrifying. Dozens of bodies hang suspended from the ceiling, and random supplies litter the ground. You have to navigate your way outside with only a cigarette lighter to see by, or perhaps a flashlight if you've been lucky enough to find one. Oh, and watch out. There are worse things underground than the cannibals. Because this is a sandbox game, crafting is a big part of the gameplay. The Forest takes a little different approach to this, in which you do most of your crafting using a survival-style book, although you can craft smaller items such as Molotov cocktails directly from your inventory screen. On the whole, The Forest is a lot of fun to play. The survival aspects are well done, and the world design is fantastic. I'm torn on the aspect of cannibals and other monsters. In a world this realistic, I think it would have perhaps been more fun to simply have to survive in a hostile environment with no real resources, rather than having to battle monsters on top of that. I should also mention that The Forest is an early access game and still has a lot of development to go before it's a finished product. That said, it plays very well, although the things that you can do and build are still fairly limited at this point. You're going to run into bugs, texture pop-ins, and other weirdness. That's just the price you pay when you get the game early and help fund development. Overall, The Forest is a damn fun game, and more than a little scary. It's a little rough around the edges, but I'm really excited about the potential of this title.